Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to our next lesson, Changes in China. This is for our unit, or the unit Age of Imperialism. So our objectives and standards: to analyze the conflict over opium in China and explain Western influence in China. Take a moment here to read over the standards, please. And a desired result: what challenges and changes took place in China. So some background. So China was able to hold off any influence by Western nations, but eventually Spanish and Portuguese traders had introduced the Chinese to different food items such as maize, which is corn, and sweet potatoes from the Americas. China also had some natural resources and was pretty good at producing manufactured goods. The Chinese had very little interest with trading with the West, though, places like Great Britain, the United States, but European merchants wanted to find a product the Chinese would buy a lot of in large amounts. And they actually found their resource in opium. And opium is a narcotic, or a drug, that comes from poppy plants. Now, Chinese doctors had used the drug for pain relief, and Europeans were soon able to smuggle it in non-medical purposes. So they were able to bring it into the country for non-medical reasons, and by 1835, Chinese people were addicts to the drug. Now, the Chinese emperor was obviously furious about this, about his people, their people of China being addicts to this drug. Excuse me, and he had one of his advisors write a letter to England's Queen Victoria about the harm being done to his country. But despite this letter, Great Britain still refused to stop the opium trade. So we're going to have a war that arises. In 1839, the Opium War begins. Most of the battles took place at sea between the Chinese and the British, and here's kind of a depiction of it here. China, however, was no match for the steam power of Great Britain, and by 1842, or in 1842, China will sign a peace treaty and surrendered control of the island of Hong Kong to Great Britain. Also, as a result of this, the opium trade will be continued in China. But China was not just being troubled by foreign influence, they were also facing from some internal problems as well. The Chinese people faced food shortages and, like we said, an increase in opium addicts. So the Chinese people actually began to rebel against the Chinese government. In the late 1830s, Hong Yizhan, a young man from southern China, began to gather some followers and some support. He wanted a country where everyone could share in the wealth and no one would be hungry. So he wanted to establish something known as a heavenly kingdom of great peace. The movement was called the Taiping Rebellion, where Taiping means great peace. So the Taiping Rebellion grows. By the 1850s, the rebellion had grown. Hong had actually gathered a peasant army of around 1 million people, and they captured large amounts of southeastern China. Hong then decided to withdraw from the rebellion, and he actually left others in charge. Now, the new leaders of the rebellion argued with each other all the time, and the Chinese emperor, along with the British and the French, actually launched attacks against the group, and by 1864, the rebellion ended due to internal fighting and attacks by others. It is estimated that at least 20 million or more died in the Taiping Rebellion. Another change in China. Some Chinese actually wanted to accept Western traditions, and one of these was the Dowager Empress Shiji. Her rule actually does allow for a better education system, a better government, and a better military. And she also allowed for more modernization to occur, such as gunboats and rifles. However, other nations around the world saw the troubles in China and attempted to take control. One of these was actually our own country, the United States. It was a trade partner with China, and they wanted to protect their interests in China from these rebellions that were going on. In 1899, the United States proposed the open door policy, and this was an idea that China would be open to all merchants from around the world. So the policy protected American interests, and it also helped keep China free of colonization by other nations as well. But there's going to be more uprising rebellions again. Many Chinese were still frustrated with the lack of changes and reforms, and poor peasants and workers were angry at the special treatment of foreigners. They felt like maybe foreigners were being treated better than they were. They were also upset with Chinese people who were starting to become Christian or trying to become Christian. So they formed a group that's going to become known as the Boxers for short. So the Boxer Rebellion, here's kind of an image of it here. The Society of Righteous and Harmonious Fist, or more commonly known as the Boxers, went to Beijing, China in the spring of 1900. They surrounded the European section of the city and held it for many months, actually kind of like keep it cut off from the rest of China. The Empress did express support for the Boxers, but they didn't fully believe her. So finally, in August of 1900, a few months later, an international force marched on Beijing and ended the Boxers and their rebellion as well. So the rising of nationalism and reform in China. The Boxer Rebellion was a failure, but it did stir the Chinese people towards nationalism, towards, forming their own stronger country. They felt that the country needed to do more to stop foreign influence, and they also needed some reforms. In 1905, the Empress sent Chinese officials around the world to learn about other countries, and they reported back to China with changes that will help China reform. Alright, so for your closure for today, so what changes and challenges took place? Think about some of the changes that took place to China. Think about some of the challenges the country faced. Please try to explain both of them, at least a challenge and a change, and that will help you answer the closure question. And let me know if you have any questions. Have a good rest of your day or night, and I will talk to you soon.